Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Couch GMs podcast. I'm your host, George Kerth, joined by not only Cody Roadcap today, but Tyler Snyder, the long-lost co-host, is back. Tyler, how you doing?
Man, I'm good. It's good to be back. I'm sorry I've been off the show for so long. Anybody out there who's listened before knows that, I work full time. And because of that, I'm not always able to record. If you guys want me on every episode, maybe you just start sending me some cash so I don't have to work anymore. And then I'll be on every episode for good.
I mean, the more support we get, the more all of us can do to help you win your fantasy league. So I like the idea, Tyler. But Cody, like I said, Cody Roadcap's also with us. Cody, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, boys. It's good to have Tyler on the show. Pretty excited since the Hall of Fame game is this week. We have actual football on our TVs on Thursday. A lot of guys we'll probably never see over in the league, but at least it's football. It's back. So definitely looking forward to that.
Yes, we are going to talk some NFL news and notes on today's show, and in preparation for football and our fantasy seasons, we're going to be doing a mock draft. This mock draft will be a 12-team, 2-flex, full PPR, so I mean, that's a lot to keep in your head. We'll talk about it more before we go into our draft later in the show. Make sure you find us on thecouchgms.com and our social media channels, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at thecouchgms. And we are also now on Discord, so make sure you check out the link in our description. Join our Discord chat. We're going to be dropping some fantasy news into there as it happens, as well as our 24/7 fantasy chat. We'll be on there just to talk, answer questions, and during games, we'll be able to give you a little bit of a live reaction to this or that. So make sure you're checking us out on Discord. That was a lot of an intro. Why don't we just jump into NFL news? And the NFL news that we have been waiting for it seems like forever is finally dropped. Deshaun Watson was announced to be suspended for 6 games following the investigation and arbitration trial. The NFL Players Association will not appeal the 6 games, but the NFL still may appeal the 6 games. So it is not completely set in stone yet, but it looks like 6 games is the thing. Instant reaction, guys. What are you thinking with Deshaun Watson?
I don't think it's enough. I mean, the NFL is just not consistent. I believe that there's, targeting hits by Myles Garrett that gets him 4 games. You have um, what's his face just got suspended for an entire year. Calvin Ridley just got suspended for an entire season for betting on games that he wasn't even playing in. And yet 30 counts of sexual assault gets you 6 games. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. I think the NFL really needs to look at their suspension guidelines.
What is worth noting on that same line, the NFL still has the right to appeal. They have a couple days, 3 days from Monday to make an official appeal. We're essentially based on the negotiated CBA. It would either be Roger Goodell making a decision or someone that he appoints. So the NFL can come in and say, hey, we want it to be more. If depending on what that happens, this could end up back in court. So this could be a little bit drawn out. So Deshaun Watson, what it means for fantasy, he's going to be out 6 weeks. If you have an IR spot that, now that he's officially suspended and you're drafting now, you can grab him if your league allows suspended players on IR. If not, I mean, 6 weeks is a long time with the fear of being more. It's going to be hard to draft him, but there's a couple weeks till the season. Maybe pick him up. Don't draft a kicker. I say that about a lot of players, but that's why that strategy works. So, but I'm with Snyder. I'm pretty surprised it was only 6 games when the NFLPA came out and said that they weren't going to, push back or they're going to accept the ruling. I got the vibe that it was going to be lower than expected. But we'll have to wait and see how this all unfolds.
Yeah, there was a couple of pages in the report that I didn't get to fully read through, but it seemed like the 6 games was a lot to do with what the NFL's policies already were. So don't be surprised if you hear a lot of updating on the NFL's policies for domestic violence, sexual assault, and seeing a bigger suspension baseline for those. But Deshaun Watson kind of gets away with it in a way in this one just because he ends up getting basically the rulebook suspension for this one. But we can move on off of Deshaun Watson and onto some contract news. We had DK Metcalf and Deebo Samuel sign almost mirroring contracts this week as the wide receiver money continues. DK Metcalf is a 3-year, $72 million deal with $58.2 million guaranteed. Deebo Samuel, 3-year, $73.5 million with $58.1 guaranteed. Instant reaction. Do you think did you expect these two to get a contract, and are you surprised that they're the same?
I'm not surprised they got a contract. They're young, up and coming stars. And, we always see when someone signs, the next person one ups them. And in this case, Debo didn't quite one up uh, DK in terms of guaranteed money, but he did one up him in total value money. So we'll have to see if he can fully reach that potential. But I do think we're starting to see a change in how star players are going to do their contracts. I think we're going to start seeing these shorter 3-year extensions or 4-year deals so that players can re-hit the free agency market with how fast it's increasing. These guys are going to be still in their prime when they're back being free agents. It also helps them, 49ers are starting with a new quarterback. The Seattle Seahawks, don't really have a quarterback. So, it's an easier out for them to get out of situations. They're not stuck on bad teams when they're, later in their careers and they're want to make a Super Bowl run. It gives them some flexibility. So I like these deals and I expect to see a lot more of them.
Yeah, it's
Tyler,
kind of interesting to see the difference in sports here because, baseball, if you have a star player signing, you can expect it to be like a 10-year, an 8-year deal, like something crazy long now. Even in hockey, like if you have a big name player signing, it's usually an 8 to 10-year deal as well. But in football, you see these top guys get signed, like you rarely ever see anything longer than 5 years. And especially now, like you were saying, you see a lot of star players getting signed for 2, 3, maybe 4 years. So definitely interesting to see the difference in sports.
Yeah, and I'm very interested to see how the wide receiver market is kind of just piled on top of each other this offseason. And I have to get Tyler's reaction to this one because I saw it come across the Twitter timeline. Little background: there's 4 wide receivers this offseason that got basically mirroring contracts. So DK Metcalf and Deebo Samuel are 2 of them. Terry McLaurin was another a few weeks back, and the first one was AJ Brown, who was traded from the Titans to the Eagles during the NFL draft. So he went to Twitter, AJ Brown did, and said, basically all 4 of us got the same contract, but I'm the only one who got traded. Yeah, keep believing it was me.
Yeah, well, see, here's the thing. Deebo Samuel, when he said that he wanted to be traded because he wasn't happy with his usage or contract or the team, um, he said he wanted to be traded. Now, since that day, the 49ers and Deebo Samuel have been working together to try to rebuild the relationship. And there's reports out there from top writers in that organization saying they put a lot of work in rebuilding that relationship, working on it, and then they were able to reach a deal. Where AJ Brown, Titans made their first initial offer to AJ Brown, and he didn't like it, and he immediately shut down, said not good enough. Said, fine, you want to sign me? It's going to have to be something ridiculous, like $50 million a year or something. And he just cut off all contact with the team completely, and kind of forced their hand and saying, like, okay, I guess we're going to have to trade this guy. That's not the way you negotiate. Just because you don't get your way on the very first offer, that's why it's called negotiations. It's you go back and forth, you talk about it, you try to work out a deal, and then if it doesn't work, you get traded. If you're not willing to work with the team, you're going to get traded. And, the issue is now you see him in Philly, and yeah, now he's saying, I'm all things Philly. I love Philly. I'm definitely an Eagles guy. But what do you see on the reports? You see A.J. Brown, Darius Slay getting in fistfights at practice. A.J. Brown, after a day after that, stiff arms Darius Slay into the ground after a catch. Like, he's a hothead. He's starting to get way too full of himself. And look, I might be jumping the gun here, or maybe I'm just an angry Titans fan, but I think you're going to start talking about this guy in the same conversations as Antonio Brown and Odell Beckham in a couple of years for being hothead receivers, making the news for all the wrong reasons.
Sounds like an angry Titan fan.
Maybe.
There's a chance you're right. I'm not gonna completely discard you. There's a good chance you're right because I didn't really love the way that it came out of how he was reacting to the Titans and even some fans on Twitter when it all went down. But hey, we'll see how that works out for the Titans and the Eagles on that side. But we're on the contract conversation. Cody and I had a really fun conversation last week about Kyler Murray's new contract and that independent study clause where he was told to study for 4 hours on his own every single week. In the final draft of the contract, that clause was removed because they said that it created a lot of unnecessary drama that they were not expecting. Do you think it's still kind of a handshake agreement that's a thing? Do you think that it was a big deal that he's not studying enough off the field, or are we just going to finally just let this one go?
I think, Kyler Murray had a press conference and he basically said it was almost insulting that people thought that he wasn't preparing to be as good as he was in the NFL. I mean, he hasn't won a playoff game or anything like that. He still has a long way to go. But to his credit, he does have a point. Like, you don't just wake up and not prepare for NFL defenses and, show up on Sunday and sling it all around. Like, those days of like true gunslinging quarterbacks, the game is so highly scrutinized down to the so technical, fine details are so important. I mean, it always did kind of seem like a weird, like add in like almost like a clause that they could get out of the contract that like backfired drastically. Like, cause who's gonna like, are they really gonna put like a stopwatch in the film room, like one of those chess pieces that he has to press when he leaves and one out, and if it goes out to 4 hours, like I don't know how they were gonna monitor it anyways. So it was probably a lot of much ado about nothing. But Kyler Murray said it best. Like, I didn't get here by not studying, so I think it was kind of overblown. And a lot of pushback from people outside of the Cardinals organization, well deserved, for trying to throw something like that in a contract.
And Kyler Murray's going to have plenty of time to do some independent studies because he did just test positive for COVID as well. So he will not be practicing with the team right now. He is going to have plenty of time to sit at home and do some independent studies.
Hopefully he gets better soon.
Hopefully.
I mean, we're kind of making a joke about it, but like COVID's still a serious thing. So we definitely want to wish him well. And Pete Carroll, he also tested positive for COVID. But since we're talking about people that we want to wish well, rookie wide receiver John Mechie III for the Houston Texans was diagnosed with leukemia. All reports are that he's in good spirits. He's ready to fight this thing. His teammates came out and said, "We got your back," which is great to see. That the Houston Texans don't have a great track record for being a good organization, but they have said all the right things. They're seen to back him. They're going to do everything they can to get him back on the field. And so for myself, the rest of Couch GMs, I know we are rooting nothing for the best with John Mechie III. Hope that he has a quick and easy recovery. He fights this and he can be back on the football field doing what he loves.
100% well said, Cody. And it's a tough break for a rookie wide receiver, but it's nice to see that the Texans will welcome him back with open arms when he is ready. And we have some other injury news to talk about before we get into our mock draft today. Starting off with the Rams, wide receiver Van Jefferson has had knee surgery. It's not something I think that we really knew about too much before this past weekend. But he is expected to miss a few weeks. There's no official timeline yet, but week 1 seems to be in question now for Van Jefferson.
And luckily they have the wide receivers over there to be able to live without him. However, you don't want to have to. Van Jefferson is an up-and-coming young player, and he was exciting last year. So hopefully a good speedy recovery for him. And if all goes well, he will be ready for week 1, but definitely keep an eye out. The Couch GMs will keep you updated.
And another guy that's looking like he's not going to be ready for week 1 was Cowboys wide receiver Michael Gallup. He will most likely miss week 1, potentially longer, as he's recovering from the torn ACL injury. And all signs coming out of camp is Jalen Tolbert is looking like the number 1 wide receiver, second-round pick. So that's a name to watch out. If you've already done your Dynasty rookie leagues and you weren't able to get a share with them, maybe as your late-round flyers in your redrafts, maybe a few best ball leagues, because it's still early, but he's looking promising, and that's expected to be a high-powered offense. So the number 2 should be a valuable fantasy option.
Taking a note in my notebook as we're about to go into a Dynasty rookie draft right after we record the show. So Cody's going to be going after Jalen Tolbert. But no, it's a great move. And then I think that also gives a little bit of a boost to Dalton Schultz, who is going to definitely take up some more of those catches until Michael Gallup gets back. So maybe you have a little bit of a point there on that sleeper tight end, Cody.
Hey, he's one of my top guys. I really like Dalton Schultz. Tyler's team, the Titans, I'm going to steal the spotlight, or we'll be here forever talking about him. But Robert Woods, he looks really good in practice. He's making his cuts. He's coming off that ACL injury. He is very underrated, I feel like. People were kind of like forgotten about him. He was still a very good receiver in LA. He's the number 1 wide receiver in Tennessee, so that's definitely a name to watch. He didn't start on the PUP. He's practicing, so definitely keep an eye on Robert Woods, and I'll throw it to Snyder if he wants to add anything else about his new wide receiver.
Yeah, just, I watch all the clips from practice that they show, and you got Robert Woods is mossing people. He's jumping on that leg. He's pivoting. He's twisting. He looks great. And he's burning people deep as well. Everything that I've seen looks like he is fully recovered. Obviously, it's always an iffy injury to come back from. But him and Caleb Farley have both been paired up together, both coming off ACL injuries last season. So that way, they both kind of know what it's like to have the torn ACL. Well, they both know what it's like to be at this point in the recovery stage, so they can work together in practice, which has been really nice. Um, but yeah, hopefully Robert Woods has a great season. But moving ahead, we got Saints quarterback Jameis Winston and wide receiver Michael Thomas are both practicing and looking good after their injuries. I know the biggest one for me was Michael Thomas, because I was hearing reports that they didn't even know if he'd play this year again, and things were up in the air. And it's Michael Thomas has been one of the weirdest injuries and one of the weirdest stories, and I feel like there's more to this story than just his actual injuries. But that's just speculation, so we can't buy into that too much. But as of right now, they're both looking good. So we can look at them. Are you guys drafting Michael Thomas right now? And if you are, where are you looking at him?
I mean, I'll take him late. I mean, he's the number one guy, so he's probably going too early for my value. There's a lot of pieces in New Orleans, a lot of new pieces. Not one. I like Jameis, not 100% sold. He'll be back week 1. And he has that name value that we talk about a lot, that people who aren't listening to the show, the people that are just watching ESPN, are just reading box scores on Monday, they're going to be like, oh, Michael Thomas in the 6th round, what a steal. Because they're still thinking that's 140 target Michael Thomas. I think those days are past us. I mean, I would take him. You always want a number one wide receiver, but it would have to probably be like round 8 or later for me, and I think he'll be gone well before then.
Yeah, I think in our early wide receiver show, he didn't even make the top 30, but I had him at 34 in my rankings. So that just after you take your flex wide receiver 4 kind of guy, I don't really want to move him too much off of that yet, especially seeing how we don't know. Like Jameis Winston's looking good. We don't know if he's going to be back for week 1. They drafted Chris Olave, who's looking amazing in practices. So yeah, I don't think you're going to get 120 target Michael Thomas, but Michael Thomas is probably going to be pretty effective if he does come back 100%.
For sure, George. And then 2 more quick notes. We'll hit just some big players, but not so much fantasy unless you're full IDP. Commanders defensive end Chase Young, young star, is most likely to miss the start of the season as he recovers from his ACL injury. And then the Buccaneers had a big blow to their offensive line when center Ryan Jensen went down with a knee injury, which is feared to be season ending. So a lot of people are talking about the Buccaneers offensive weapons. They just signed Julio. We talked about that last week. Chris Godwin is coming off the PUP. Like, look at this team. But we know Tom Brady is not good under pressure, especially right up the middle. And now it looks like they're going to have a new center and 2 new guards to start the season. So maybe reel in some expectations as an older Tom Brady with more pressure up the middle might be coming his way this season.
Man, we say this every single year, and I don't believe it anymore.
I'm not saying Tom Brady's going to be bad. I'm just going to say he might not have as many clean pockets.
Fair, but he's going to figure out a way. It's going to happen. But yeah, that's definitely something worth noting for fantasy, and even more maybe for the run game for Tampa Bay as well. Like, we already heard the speculation of Leonard Fournette coming in overweight, having that little bit of concern. Now you lose one of their best offensive line pieces and blockers for the run game. That's a little bit concerning.
For sure, but that's probably enough news, so why don't we get into our mock draft?
Yeah, we are back with another mock draft, and we're going to be doing a dueling mock draft today because we need to see how Tyler drafts going into this new season. So we all are going to have our own teams in this. Cody ran the random number generator for our picks. I will be picking pick 3. Cody in near the middle of the round in pick 5, and Tyler way down there at pick 12. But I'm very interested to see how you handle the turn.
Be on the show more often, get a higher pick.
Yeah, then you get pick 3 and I get 12. But the number 12 seems to be lucky in this draft because we're doing a 12-team draft, but it's also 12 rounds. We're doing full PPR scoring, a little bit different than we usually do on this show. We normally do half PPR, but doing a little bit of variety for the people out there. Our rosters are going to be 1 starting quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 1 tight end. We're going double flex, 2 flex positions, and 4 players then left on the bench. I think that pretty much wraps us up. Cody, you can hit start whenever you're ready, and we'll get into it.
Alrighty. So just a reminder, you can head over to YouTube and you can see the full draft board as it happens. Watch along with us. If you're listening in the car, you can check that out. First 2 picks were Christian McCaffrey went 101, and then Jonathan Taylor went 1-2. And George, you are on the clock.
Now, I was going to lean Christian McCaffrey over Derrick Henry because this is a full PPR, and we know that Christian McCaffrey has a chance to catch 20 balls a game, it seems like. But Derrick Henry is normally my consensus number 2, so having him fall to me at number 3, I think that's got to be my pick, even though he is not the most exciting PPR guy. He was actually getting a couple extra catches before he got injured last year, so you got to remember that a little bit. I'm just going to stick with what should be the easy pick of Derrick Henry at 3.
Man, I am shocked you didn't take Austin Eckler, who went 4, especially in a full point PPR. I feel like you were just afraid of Snyder, which he's all the way at pick 12. I don't know what you had to be afraid of. But I mentioned Austin Eckler went 4. I'm 5, and this is like a dream come true. I'm getting Cooper Kupp. I'm not even going to talk about it. I would have considered him at the second pick in a full point PPR because he's going to get those targets. We just talked about Van Jefferson being gone. So Cooper Kupp, I added him to my draft board, not actually making the selection. This is new to sleeper, I guess. But after me goes Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook, Jamar Chase, Joe Mixon, Najee Harris, DeAndre Swift. Now, Tyler, you're up and get to close out round 1.
Who you got to steal from yourself?
Yeah, okay, so I think one of the hardest positions to find is tight end. I know it's interesting taking a first-round tight end, but Travis Kelce's there. He's consistent every year. They don't have Tyreek Hill anymore, so he's going to be the number 1 target. I'm going Travis Kelce. And then on the swing pick, I am a big believer in running backs early. I know Cody would probably be like, Adams. But I'm not taking Devontae Adams here. I'm going to go with the running back. And honestly, he's one of my favorite running backs in the entire draft. I don't care how the team looks this year. And that is Nicholas Chubb. I'm going Nick Chubb round 2.
So Nick Chubb, even though it's full point PPR, you're still taking him.
Still full point PPR, Nick Chubb.
Wow. I mean, that's definitely an impressive, stack right there. And standard scoring and half point PPR, but I think Nick Chubb's a little high. That's my opinion, but that's why it's not my team. After Snyder did go Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs, who I would have been debating there on the turn, but I really did like your Travis Kelce pick at the end of the round 1, so I will give you credit for that one. Mark Andrews, Josh Allen, first quarterback taken off the board, 6th pick in the second round. Saquon Barkley, that seems really high for him coming off, but it is full point PPR, and he's expected to be involved in the pass game. Which brings me on the clock here, and Snyder mentioned it. I love my wide receivers. I traditionally go wide receiver here, but I'm not. I might surprise people. There's one name I'm looking for, and it's a running back, and you're going to call me a homer or not, but Aaron Jones is going to lead the team in, not lead the team in targets, but he is probably going to be like number 2 in targets this year, right up there, very high pass volume. Full point PPR, steal of the second round. And I hit the wrong button again on Sleeper because I can't actually see the corner of my screen.
Dude, get it together.
It's the screen recording. I can't see past the camera, and so I'm just clicking buttons. But I did go Aaron Jones, followed by Deebo Samuel next. And George, you're on the clock.
Man, you were going on that rant. I'm like, this guy's taking Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara, at least I view as more of a pass-catching back than Aaron Jones. But Aaron Jones is still a solid pick. And I think we have to talk about Alvin Kamara for a second because we talked about he might be suspended, he might not. It's looking more and more like his trial for his incident after the Pro Bowl is going to get pushed towards the end of or at the end or into next season. So I'm not super worried about a suspension out of him right away. So it was either going to be him or Deebo Samuel for me. Deebo Samuel went between Cody and I, so I'm taking Alvin Kamara, and you can talk about me taking Derrick Henry in the first round all you want. I got my pass-catching running back in round 2.
Hey, I don't mind it, and for me, there is still the looming suspension. That was one of the reasons Alvin Kamara wasn't consideration. And they had about the same amount of targets last year as they did. But we just talked about how Michael Thomas is coming back. They added Chris Olave. They added Jarvis Landry. The Packers have a lot of targets that they're losing in Devontae Adams. So that is why I have Aaron Jones ahead of them. But I think I cut off Snyder. So what were you going to add, bud?
No, I was just going to say the next pick after Alvin Kamara was Javonte Williams. To round out round 2, we got Kyle Pitts. So we have our third tight end taken already, followed by A.J. Brown as the first pick in the 3rd round. Mike Evans was the next pick, and George, you are back on the clock.
All right, so I am in a little bit of a debate with myself here. So if we're talking the influence of catches, I think I'm going to go wide receiver. Just I'll put that out there because I have 2 running backs, especially in how drafts have been going lately. I've not even normally been going 2 running backs in the first 2 rounds, but here we are after I had Kamara code to me. It's between Tyreek Hill and Keenan Allen. Tyreek Hill is definitely your more big play guy. We were talking about we don't exactly know how that Miami offense is going to look, but we did see a nice little Twitter clip of him getting hit for a 65-yard touchdown in practice, so maybe Tua does have the arm. But Keenan Allen is more of the pass catcher. He's going to get you more receptions, help you in a full PPR format. So, okay, fine. Call me the not really homer. I'm going to go with Keenan Allen over Tyreek Hill here in round 3.
What a homer.
Had to get a Charger.
Now I know why you didn't take Austin Eckler. It came full circle. You didn't want to double up on the Chargers in first 3 rounds. That makes sense. For me, Patrick Mahomes went next, so that's where Team 4 went in the round 3. So I'm on the clock. And Tyreek Hill is sitting there, and I feel like that is incredible value in the 3rd round. He might not be the full point PPR guy, but I got that in Cooper Kupp. So just the big play, the big playability. I really like Tyreek Hill. The other name I was thinking, just I'll throw it out there because you probably won't make it back to me, but it's a little bit lower on the draft board, and that would be running back David Montgomery if I was going to take a running back here. Leonard Fournette, Ezekiel Elliott, James Conner, they're like the guys that they're solid options, but I can't get excited about any of those guys. Like they all have potential to be a top 10 fantasy running back, and then they could all just be like the average guy that's name value. You can't trade him, you can't cut him. But with Tyreek Hill on the board, I am going to go Tyreek Hill if I can actually select Tyreek Hill. I'm just going to have to add to my queue. That's how I'm going to have to do this. Add to queue and then pick. Leonard Fournette, Ezekiel Elliott did go right next. Justin Herbert, James Conner, T. Higgins, George Kittle, and Snyder is back on the clock currently with Travis Kelce and Nick Chubb on his team.
Man, with that double flex, I could just go Travis Kelce and Darren Waller and really throw some people for a loop. But I'm not going to do that. Give me a second here. There was about 6 picks in between the last pick and this pick, so gotta weigh my options here.
While you think, I'm going to ask you a question because you brought up Darren Waller, and George and I debated this at a couple weeks back. What are you lower on him now that they added Devontae Adams? Or do you still think there's room for him? Because I know, me personally, I was like, well, is he now the 3rd option behind Hunter Renfrow and Devontae Adams? Like, is he still valuable, or is he like a name that – because I'm avoiding him, so I wanted to get your thoughts.
I don't know if he's as valuable as he used to be, but I still absolutely think he's valuable. Obviously, I think you got to take Kelce, Kittle, Andrews, and Pitts. Like, those are your top 4 guys. But, like, after those 4, you name me a tight end that you like more than Darren Waller, and I bet you I can make an argument for why Darren Waller is still better. There is still target share in that offense. Yes, he might not be the number 1 target anymore, but he's still a big dude. He's still going to draw some red zone targets. And I think that offense might be one of the surprisingly best offenses in the league this year, just because of who they have on that offense. So I still think he's valuable, not quite as valuable as last year, but for the position at tight end, a position you cannot find people at, still love him. I would still absolutely take him as my number 1 tight end. Now that all that rambling is done, I am going to steal Cody's pick. I'm going to go David Montgomery for all the reasons he just said. I think it's a great choice. The issue with that is now I'm in round 4. I have Kelce, Chubb, and Montgomery. I still am yet to take a wide receiver. Looking at the available wide receivers, you got Deontay Johnson, who I think is a decent pick at this point. I've never been a fan of Deontay Johnson, but still, I think at this point in the draft, not a bad pick, but you have a new quarterback. You have other weapons in that system that I'm not in love with. Terry McLaurin is another good one. In the past, he looked great. Last year, he burned me in fantasy. I like Jalen Waddle's speed and abilities here as well. But out of the three, the one that I like the most, I mean, I don't really like any of them, but the one I like the most is Terry McLaurin, and that's who I'm going to lock in as my wide receiver one.
Interesting. I know that it's always tough when you get a guy that burns you in the past for to take him again the following year, but you did it. After you went Cam Akers, then Jalen Waddle, Deontay Johnson, Antonio Gibson, Bryce Hall, and DJ Moore, which puts me back on the clock here, and it puts me in an incredibly difficult position because I was hoping one of these guys went to make my decision easier, but I'm debating between Michael Pittman and Travis Etienne, two young guys who I expect to have breakout seasons, and I think I like Michael Pittman better, but because we still have two running back spots, and I'm not in love with some of the later round running backs as I am the wide receivers, I am going to pivot and take Travis Etienne and really hope Team 4 takes Michael Pittman so George doesn't get him.
And they did not. So Cody makes my decision easy, and I'm going to go with Michael Pittman as my wide receiver 2. If you guys remember, he was actually in my top 12 wide receivers in the rankings. So that's me looking at it being like, 2 wide receiver 1s going into the round 5. We had Josh Jacobs go after me, and then Lamar Jackson, DK Metcalf, who was another receiver I was going to take if Pittman got taken, and then J.K. Dobbins goes before me. I'm back on the clock in round 5, and I'm very balanced with 2 running back, 2 wide receivers, so I can kind of go anywhere here. Another receiver that I think a lot of people are sleeping on is Courtland Sutton. Obviously, him and Jerry Jeudy are both at the top of the board, and we're split as a podcast on who the number 1 wide receiver is in Denver between Jeudy and Sutton. We also got Amari Cooper, whose value gets a little bit of a boost now that Deshaun Watson might only be missing 6 games. But I don't really like how the running back position starts to fall off after this next little group. I do not really like Clyde Edwards-Helaire here. I think this is a little early for A.J. Dillon, but the 2 people I'm between are 2 people I was between earlier in a mock draft, and that's Elijah Mitchell and Miles Sanders. It is a little bit of a toss-up, but I'm actually going to go with Miles Sanders in this draft just to kind of change it up a little bit. I'm going to go back to my original rankings where Miles Sanders was a little bit higher than Elijah.
Why don't you just go like this, George, when you made that pick? Just flash the Eagles. Like, it's okay that you're making a homer pick. We tell people all the time not to be homers, and here's George picking Chargers and Eagles. This guy. But
as you picked Packers already too.
Yeah, but that was value.
Thank you, Tyler.
That was round 2.
So yeah, Keenan Allen is not a round 3 value, and Miles Sanders is not a round 5 value. That's what I'm hearing.
Yep, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, that's good to know.
I'm just hard time
yet, so
that's because outside of Henry, who do you actually want in terms of fantasy? Like, I think they're going to be a solid team, but they don't have a lot of fantasy options. But with my pick now on the board, Amari Cooper did go next. For me, this is a no-brainer. If you've been listening to the show, there's one guy here who I actually like a little bit better than Keenan Allen. I think in a full point PPR, I would have Keenan Allen ahead of him, so I think George made the right pick. But I'm going to take his running mate, his counterpart. Thanks. And I'm going to take Mike Williams, but I am getting him 2 rounds later for a guy I think will have a pretty similar season. So I do like the value there. A little run of wide receivers that I was a part of, but Jerry Jeudy went next, then Courtland Sutton. So Broncos wide receivers back-to-back, followed by new Rams wide receiver Allen Robinson. Joe Burrow comes off the board, Elijah Mitchell, and then we're back to wide receivers with Hollywood Brown, which brings us to Tyler, who needs to round out round 5.
Yeah. Man, this is tough. I mean, I like Chris Godwin here. I really, really do. I think he is probably the best guy on the board at this point. The issue is we don't know what's going on with that ACL. The latest report says they will not rush him back, which means maybe he'll miss a few weeks, so they nurse him back. But, I don't know. He's a questionable guy, and when I only have one wide receiver so far, it's tough to take another one. the top ranked people right now are Kyler Murray, Dalton Schultz, TJ Hawkinson. I already got Kelsey. Don't need a tight end here. And quarterback, I don't draft quarterbacks. So that's out of the question. Brandon Cooks is an interesting one because he is always putting up points. Somebody has to get points in Houston. I just don't want a Houston player at all. Man, this is tough. This part of the draft is disgusting.
Hey, we're only in round 5. We got 7 more to go. So,
There's nobody else.
The guys that you can take flyers on get more exciting. Like right now, it's like, do you want Chris Godwin, who might miss 4 weeks? Do you want Brandon Cooks, who will probably never get you a 20-point week, but he will always get you at least 12? Like that's where you're at. Do you want the safe? Do you want to take a flyer at this point? Amari St. Brown, like how real was that without, like, are you excited about him? There's a lot of difficult options. I don't envy your position.
Yeah, this one's tough. So, you know what? I got to stop stalling and go ahead and take a pick.
Because you got 2 of them.
I'm going to go with a guy.
Why not both?
No, not going both. Not going both. So I'm going to start it off with a guy that I think has potential to put up big points every week if he gets the playing time that he can get. There's also not a lot of weapons in that offense right now, so he is a guy that can definitely steal some fantasy points, and that is A.J. Dillon. He is not listed as a number 1 running back in that system, but look, we saw it last year. They're both going to get playing time. They're both going to be startable. So A.J. Dillon is definitely a guy I like here. And for wide receivers, you know, I feel like I have to take a wide receiver here. I like Amon-Ra St. Brown. I like Brandon Cooks. I really like Darnell Mooney, but I'm going to go with the guy that I think is going to have the best season down the stretch. I might miss a few weeks with him, but if I go into the fantasy playoffs with Chris Godwin, it's over. I won.
I don't hate that pick. You're just going to have to try to find a way to fill, with your next few picks, that wide receiver 2 spot until he is back in the lineup fully. The computer was listening to you as well because Brandon Cooks goes right after you, followed by Jalen Hurts, Dalton Schultz, sorry, Cody, Juju Smith-Schuster, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and Kyler Murray to bring it back to Cody.
Yeah, I do like the Chris Godwin pick. I mean, it is worth noting he didn't start the season on PUP. So, I mean, if they would have kept him on PUP, that's guaranteed 4 weeks. So there is at least hope that he can be back within those first 4 weeks. So great value in the 6th round. Dalton Schultz was the tight end I was hoping to fall. I would have taken him with this pick, but he's not there. So tight end, I am practically punting on at this point. I like TJ Hawkinson, but not this much. So for me, I'm going to take a flyer on this guy. It's more of, hoping. I don't love the offense that he's on. I don't think there's going to be a lot of touchdown opportunities, but I do think he's going to see a lot of targets, and this is full point PPR. So a couple of those 8 catches, 70-yard games with no touchdowns just because they can't move the ball, but he is the number 1 wide receiver. He's a young guy, and that is Tyler's favorite, Darnell Mooney.
Love that, man. I love that man a lot.
If I could hit the right button. I don't understand why I'm struggling. This is like our 3rd mock draft show, and I haven't struggled this hard. But I go Darnell Mooney, and Damian Harris goes next, which gives George back on the clock. I don't see any Chargers or Eagles in the top 10 or 15, whatever is listed on the board, so I have no idea what George is going to do.
Crazy.
Man, okay, so again, very balanced team so far. 3 running backs, 2 wide receivers. Most 2 wide receivers I'm very high on, so I feel like I can take a little bit of a risk. And there's one guy on here who used to eat in a PPR format, and we talked about him earlier in the show. Michael Thomas is the master of the slant pass. As long as he gets enough targets, I think there's a very good chance he could at least get back a lot of that value in a PPR. So I'm going to go with him. I don't think it's really too bad of a pick in round 6. This probably answers Tyler's question even better than before. Where would you take him? End of round 6, round 7 seems like a pretty good spot.
I also did say he'll probably go in round 6, but I wouldn't take him until round 8. So thank you for taking him in round 6. So that worked out. Rashad Bateman went right after that. Very interesting name. The number 1 right now in Baltimore, but they don't throw the ball that often. Amon-Ra St. Brown to round out round 6. Then Drake London, first rookie off the board, and start round 7, followed by TJ Hawkinson. And George, you are back up.
All right. So, man, I feel like I have to reset here a little bit. DeAndre Hopkins is on the board here. Another wide receiver who you could take in that Michael Thomas spot, and he's suspended for 6 weeks. But again, like down the stretch, like Godwin could be a very big asset for your team. Not going to do that because I just took one questionable wide receiver. Russell Wilson's coming up onto the board around this time. We know that I like Russell Wilson in fantasy. Dallas Goedert as well is probably the last tight end that I would kind of reach on in this area, but I can't even take him because I'm just going to get completely teased for it. But anyway,
don't let your league mates determine your picks. If you like a guy, you take him. That's not just for George. That's for any fantasy listener out there.
It's true, because if you guys were trying to influence me towards a pick, it's going to totally be Cordarrelle Patterson. We know that. But anyway, Adam Thielen has really fallen down boards a lot this year. And we know that there's going to be a big rise of Justin Jefferson. But even when Justin Jefferson was being very productive in the last few years, Adam Thielen was still a very solid wide receiver. Considering I have a sketchy wide receiver 3, someone who could fill in for a flex pretty nicely is Adam Thielen. So in round 7, I'm going to go with that and try to, basically give myself a backup for that last pick in case it doesn't work out. And then I can go back and make a trade in season if it does work out with Michael Thomas. And then between Cody and I talked about DeAndre Hopkins. He went, so you're back up.
All right. Well, with those two guys off the board, which I expected them to be, this makes my pick really easy for me. I'm going to take Kareem Hunt, this full point PPR. He is a big part of that offense, big part of the pass game, and a potential trade deadline player if a team is looking for a running back that could be a starter with a Nick Chubb injury or on a new team, but still a very talented player. Give me my third running back, and I'll take Kareem Hunt. Rookie Kenneth Walker went next. Eagles wide receiver Devontae Smith, followed by Devin Singletary, running back for the Buffalo Bills. Cordarrelle Patterson, running back, only listed as a running back this year. Cordarrelle Patterson, Dallas Goedert, and Dak Prescott. Snyder, you're up to end round 7.
Oh, let's go. I'm excited. Man, I was just praying he wouldn't go. This is going to be out of character for me because I bashed him on the podcast whenever the last time I was on the podcast, I don't know, a year ago. I'm not bashing him because I don't think he's a good player. I'm bashing him because I don't know if he's as high as everyone is hyping him up to be. But guys, we have Jerry Jeudy ranked as a top receiver. We have Courtland Sutton ranked as a top receiver. There is one person throwing them the ball that should be getting those points. And he's a mobile quarterback, which is a cheat code. Russell Wilson, look, I know I don't draft quarterbacks, but at this point in the draft, I mean, we're talking round 7. Getting Russell Wilson as my starting quarterback, I cannot complain at all with that. So I'm going to take him there. I like Gabriel Davis a lot. Not going to take him, though. Treylon Burks is honestly a good option at this point. Somebody needs to catch the ball in that Titans offense. Robert Woods is probably going to end up being the number 1, but Treylon Burks and Ryan Tannehill are developing a good connection in camp so far. So somebody's got to catch the ball, and we're talking about PPR. Man, I'm between 2 receivers, though, and I'm going to go with – I love Elijah Moore. He's the other guy I was debating. Big fan of Elijah Moore. I was hoping he went to the Titans when he got drafted. However, I don't trust Zach Wilson right now. All the reports in camp are saying Zach Wilson is still struggling a lot. I'm going to go with the guy I trust a little bit more. I'm going to go with everybody's favorite uncle, and that is the least athletic-looking receiver in the NFL, Hunter Renfrow. Big fan of Hunter Renfrow. I think he's going to have a good year. I do know they got Devontae Adams, but Devontae Adams is also going to take all of the top corner coverage, leaving Hunter Renfrow there ready to snag everything else. Big fan of him this year, and at this point in the draft, it's a great pick.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to mention too, like when we say that we don't draft quarterbacks, like round 7, round 8 is when I usually start looking at the quarterback position. So being able to get someone like Russell Wilson in the very end of round 7 is actually a great pick. I don't blame you there. And Hunter Renfrow as well. I like that value. After Tyler went Gabriel Davis, and then James Cook, the other Bills running back, Elijah Moore, Tony Pollard, Dawson Knox, and Rashad Penny to bring it back to Cody.
Yeah, I'm up here. I did look ahead when I was on the clock last and see that only Snyder was the remaining team until I picked again that didn't have a quarterback. So I would have taken Russell Wilson if he let that slide because he probably would have fell to me, but he didn't, which is good. I was hoping Elijah Moore fell, and he didn't. So there's 2 guys I'm looking at here, and this is crazy, but I might take another running back, and that would be Chase Edmonds, another potential pass catcher, but I already have Tyreek Hill. So I don't want to pile up too many on the 49ers, or not the 49ers. That's his old team. He's now on the Dolphins. Should be the lead back there. And then the other guy was Brandon Ayuk, who is apparently turned the corner. He seems not to be in the doghouse. He is looking really good. He's a guy I'm interested in as well. And then you can't rule out Tyler Lockett, like the old reliable. But I think even though I talked about all those guys, and I can't do it. Nope, I can't do it. I was going to take a quarterback here, but I'm not. There's too many quarterbacks left for me to take it. So I am going to take the flyer as a potential option on Brandon Ayuk.
So Cody takes Brandon Ayuk and Treylon Burks goes after. I'm up. I'm trying to kind of peek and see who hasn't taken a quarterback yet. And it looks like it's Cody and it's team 2. So of course team 2 has 2 picks between now and my next pick. So it makes me look a little bit closer at the quarterback position. And somebody who I know Cody's not going to let fall any further is Tom Brady. Like, I think that's his quarterback target if he gets back around to him. So I'm debating that. No, I'm not really the biggest fan, but is there a little bit of a step up between him and maybe an Aaron Rodgers and Matthew Stafford? Probably. So I'll go a little bit against how I usually draft, and I will say, yeah, sure. Props to Tom Brady. I'll take him here in round 8. And then Aaron Rodgers went after that, followed by Chase Edmonds, Garrett Wilson, and Tyler Lockett to bring it back around to me. So I still need a tight end. The top tight ends on the board are Zach Ertz, Pat Freiermuth, Mike Gesicki. I'm not even going to say the word Cole Kmet. So I'm probably just going to completely punt that position and go for it right at the end. Back to the top of the board, Chris Olave is somebody I mentioned, but I already have Michael Thomas on my team, so I'm not going to go for that one, but I do like the later round pick of Chris Olave as a good little stab there. But we were talking a little bit earlier about Titans wide receivers. Treylon Burks already went, but I think I might like Robert Woods even a little bit better. So I'm going to go out there and snag Robert Woods, and if you get... maybe he could end up being this year's Michael Pittman. We take him very late. He ends up being a wide receiver 1 and putting up some solid points.
No, I like the Robert Woods pick. I was going to take him. I was actually debating him when I took Brandon Ayuk, but I was hoping maybe he'd fall back to me. Tom Brady wasn't the guy I was looking at. The quarterback I was looking at is actually still here, and that is Matthew Stafford because of the Cooper Kupp stack. For me, that would make a ton of sense. But I'm also looking at the draft board and seeing that every other team has a quarterback. So which team is going to take a second one? Am I going to miss out on a guy? Because there is a couple other ones I'm still interested in. But I do think...
Can I just say, Cody, before you announce your pick and everything, just a little piece of fantasy advice for anybody out there. And we can all agree on this. Don't ever assume that you know what people are going to do. Don't ever think that you can expect exactly what's going to happen. Right here, Cody can say, I don't want to take a quarterback because everybody else has a quarterback. Nobody should take them. And that's when you have the team that drafts 3 quarterbacks by round 10. Like, is it a smart move? No. But now you have less quarterbacks and you didn't get the guy you wanted. So don't ever expect you know what everyone else is going to do. Drafting is crazy. It's a crapshoot. So be ready for anything.
No, that's great advice. And like I said, there's no guarantee that people don't start taking their backups. And I already told Tyler who gets to pick twice, so maybe he'll take a second one. I doubt it because that's not his style. But like you said, you never know. But there is one name, and I gave George a lot of heat for being a homer here. But there is still one potential number 1 guy that everybody is raving about coming out of Packers camp. I know I don't really like having 2 Packers players, but if I could get a true number 1 option, a guy that could put up 1,000 yards in round 9, I have to do it. Despite wanting that stack pretty bad with Matthew Stafford, I'm going to take a risk here and see if anyone takes a quarterback, and I'm going to go Allen Lazard with my pick.
Was there any thought of like Christian Watson going there too? Because I know he's someone that's also coming up towards the top of the draft board.
No, not in a redraft. I love Christian Watson, but I am not in on him in a redraft this year.
Okay. So you're 100% Allen Lazard on that Green Bay wide receiver core, basically.
As of right now, I'm 100% Allen Lazard as the guy I would own. There's some like late round flyer options. Like I would maybe consider, not now because I took Allen Lazard, but like if we were going like a full 15 rounds and stuff like that, I would probably consider a Sammy Watkins, or even like a shot at Randall Cobb as in a full point PPR. But for me, Allen Lazard seems to be the clear guy. And I mentioned at the top two, like I think I got the 1 and 2 pass options for the Green Bay Packers on my team right now in Allen Lazard and Aaron Jones.
So Homer picks there, and then after that, it's Zach Ertz going, and then Trey Lance and Matthew Stafford, Chris Olave to Team 9, and then Christian Kirk, Mike Gesicki, and back to Tyler on the turn.
Yeah, it's up to me again. This is why I said, like, don't ever expect what's going on, because the guy who took Justin Herbert in round 3 is taking Matthew Stafford, taking a backup quarterback. So if Cody was looking at the draft board and saying Stafford's the only other quarterback I like, I'd rather take the safe pick, take him, make sure you got a quarterback you like rather than passing on him. So for this pick, now that we're here, I am going to reach. I'm flat out telling you it's a reach, and I don't care. I really like this guy. This is one of my sleepers for this season. And honestly, in round 9, I don't mind making a reach 9-10 because I have the swing. DeAndre Hopkins is suspended. He's going to miss some time. You have another receiver in there. Like, yes, they have Hollywood Brown. They do. But they do have a rookie they drafted last year that really made some exciting plays and really has an all-around talented receiver and has a chance to really step up and be a number 1, number 2 wide receiver for a team that likes to air it out, and that's Rondale Moore for Arizona. I am a huge fan of him. I think he's a sleeper, and I think he's going to have a big season. After Rondale Moore, I mean, that's where it gets a little bit more sketchy. Yeah, I mean, at this point of the draft, it's all like, take what you like. If there's a person you really like, go ahead and snag them. I like Christian Watson as a potential. Spiller is an interesting one if you are an Eckler owner at this point in this draft. Like, you could take him to shore it up. I am not. Tyler Boyd every year just puts up points. I mean, he's not the number 1 over there, but he definitely puts up points. But, man, I'm stalling. Because I'm between 2. All right, so the guy I'm not going to take is Pat Freiermuth. I already have Travis Kelce. I don't need a second tight end, really. If I want one, I could take one later, but Pat Freiermuth is one of my favorite people in the draft. He's one of my favorite tight ends. If you're not going to get one of the big guys, I love waiting to the end of the draft and taking Freiermuth. I'm actually going to take another guy that's on his team, and that is Chase Claypool. Claypool is just a super talented wide receiver. He has that potential. Yes, he is dealing with some injuries right now, but they still expect him to be ready by week 1. And I think at this point in the draft, if you can get a guy with Chase Claypool's abilities and his ceiling, you have to take it.
I definitely understand that pick. And I do like the Pat Freiermuth too. So I understand why you were struggling so hard there. Michael Carter did go next, followed by Pat Freiermuth, rookie Sky Moore for the Chiefs, followed by Cole Kmet, Russell Gage, who's probably getting drafted a little bit too high after all the additions. Then Derek Carr was another quarterback I was debating. Here, I'm back on the clock, and as teams are quickly grabbing 2 quarterbacks, that leaves me with limited options, which is okay because I did skip. I wanted Matt Stafford. I made that very known. I love Trey Lance. Everybody knows that if you listen to this show. Derek Carr was one of the options, but there's one other guy that gets talked about in a bad way, and I think he puts up decent numbers on a regular basis. He's probably not a guy. I'm not saying I'm going to draft him or start him every week. I might, pivot him out if it's a primetime game. A little foreshadow of who I'm going to take here. But a guy that finished top 12 in points per game last year. He got a new offensive-minded head coach, not a guy that wants to run the ball. I'm a huge fan of Justin Jefferson, and that's the guy throwing to him. So it is late. It is round 10, but I am going to go ahead and grab Kirk Cousins, who I do think most likely finishes the year as a top 12 quarterback. So getting him here is great value.
So after Cody taking Cousins, it went Isaiah Spiller. And I'm kind of just looking back here saying I still don't have a tight end, but I was hoping Freiermuth would fall. I'm right with Tyler how I really do love Pat Freiermuth, even though that situation's a little bit scary with the quarterbacks. I think he might be one of the safer options in that offense. And as much as you guys pick on me for liking Cole Kmet, I was not going to draft him, but the computer did it anyway. The top tight ends on the board are Albert Owegbunam, Hunter Henry, Irv Smith, Noah Fant. I'm just gonna wait until the second to last or last round to take that tight end because I don't think it's really worth it. To keep rounding out my team, I'm gonna take a fourth running back because I did kind of get away from the running back position since round 5, and I'm looking at it as there's 2 potential number 1 running backs still sitting out there. One's James Robinson, who you guys will definitely disagree with me with because you really like Travis Etienne, and I do like Travis Etienne, but I still think there's a chance James Robinson has a role in that offense. And the other one is Ronald Jones, because we all don't really seem to love Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He is starting the season with an injury, and Ronald Jones has shown plenty of flashes in his career. The downside to Ronald Jones is that Kansas City offense does not run much. So it's kind of a coin flip. I'm going to stick with James Robinson here as my running back 4. This is kind of a pick that probably won't hurt me if it doesn't work out, but I have been hoping that he would work up to it the entire offseason, so I'm going to keep putting my faith in it, and it's kind of a late round flyer anyway.
No, there is rumors that Ronald Jones won't even make the roster.
Yeah, I was gonna say the exact same thing. It doesn't make a ton of sense because how little like the cap savings I think is only like 700,000. Yeah. So I think he'll get there and he could be an in-season cut if he doesn't perform. But that's just a guy to keep an eye out that might not make the roster. I would have went Ramondre Stevenson over James Robinson with the reports that he is the number 1 back now ahead of Damian Harris, at least at the early starts of camp. And James Robinson didn't start on PUP, but is still a pretty significant injury. But George likes him better than Travis Etienne, so that's incredible value this late in the draft. I mentioned Stevenson. He went right next, followed by Christian Watson, Ronald Jones to kick off the 11th round, Kadarius Toney, and George, you are back on the clock.
All right, so need a tight end in one of the last 2 picks, but I don't really care which of the group I really get anymore, and I'll probably be riding the waiver wire for that in this team just with how it kind of broke out. I did not jump on that position early enough, but that's fine. So I'm going to go ahead and get another late round flyer here. I'm looking at wide receivers again, and there's always a good chance that Michael Gallup comes back and plays well. Like, we know he's probably not going to be there to start the season, but he could end up being an incredible value down here. Marquez Valdes-Scantling is someone else I'm looking at because we don't really know who the number 1 is in Kansas City, and he's got as fair of a shot as any. I'm kind of staying away from Jarvis Landry because I already have Michael Thomas on my roster, but he's someone else to watch for. And then there's the rookies in Jamison Williams and Jahan Dotson, who you could always take a late round flyer on. I like a lot of wide receivers down here as, yeah, we don't know if they're going to be number 1 targets, but there's a lot of value that could be found. I'm going to go for the big play threat, and I'm going to go with Marquez Valdes-Scantling in this spot. But any of those guys I said could be great for late round flyers in round 11.
I agree, George. Alexander Mattinson went right next. Then I'm back on the clock here. And yes, I agree with George in a sense that there's a lot of tight ends that are, hit or miss. You're going to have to play for the waiver wire. But there is one guy I really like. And for at least week 1, I'm going to have the stackable option. And I'm going to go my tight end here before there's really nobody left. And I am going to take Irv Smith Jr. I think he's going to have a bounce back year coming off the injury. A very solid option starting into Adam Thielen's. I've liked him since he came out of Alabama. So getting him here, stacking him with Kirk Cousins, I love that option. Jarvis Landry did go next, followed by Michael Gallup, Tyler Boyd, Rashad White, rookie running back, for the Buccaneers. Rookie running back Dameon Pierce went after him for the Houston Texans. Nyheim Hines, which is an interesting name I was also looking at. And then Tyler, you were on the clock with your last 2 picks. Shaking his head, he might have been interested in Nyheim Hines.
I was definitely interested in Nyheim Hines. He's a pass-catching guy. And this year he has Matt Ryan thrown to him, which last year there was this running back who just so happened to catch a bunch of passes and become a fantasy godsend named Cordarrelle Patterson, who was on the same team. So Nyheim Hines could have been that guy this year, but it's all right. He was stolen from me. I'm going to take, at this point in the draft, I think Dameon Pierce has a chance to take the number 1 role for Houston, but right now, there's two other running backs in that system, Rex Burkhead and Marlon Mack. And out of those two, I think Marlon Mack has the best chance of taking the number one role. So I'm going to take Marlon Mack as a running back, a late flyer. It's just for depth, guys. It's not because I'm like, oh, Marlon Mack's going to be great. It's depth. I mean, if he is the number one running back and some of my guys go down, it's somebody I can slot in there. Otherwise, not huge on him. So after that, so here's my thoughts. I could go with Deshaun Watson, stash him on my suspension list, and then I have another quarterback, but I'm not big into having two quarterbacks unless I really have to. Russell Wilson should be fine. I can find a fill in for his bye week. I could also go one of these tight ends here. Um, but again, I have Travis Kelce, so I'm not too worried about it. Um, or I could go another wide receiver, but I have 11 of them, so I don't need another wide receiver. So there's nothing of serious need at this point in the draft, and I have not yet been a homer. So I feel like it's time for me to be a little bit of a homer. I'm going to get a backup tight end, and I'm going with Austin Hooper. Over Alberto and some of these other guys, I feel like Hooper has the best chance to actually succeed. Tannehill loves throwing to the tight ends in the red zone. So now you have the red zone threat. And again, we're not thrilled on the Titans' pass catching options. We don't know if Robert Woods is going to be that great. We don't know if Traylon Burks is going to be that great. So somebody's got to catch the ball. Austin Hooper has been one of the best guys in all of camp so far. And we've seen what he can do in the past. He's been a fantasy asset in the past. So this late in the draft, I think it's a steal to get Austin Hooper.
Yeah, like you said, this is for depth. You already have your Travis Kelce guy, but this is a 2-flex league. So some weeks you might have to start a second tight end, which is going to be tough. But Austin Hooper, there's a void in where pass targets are going to come from or go to, and he has potential to get them. So great value at that point. Deshaun Watson went after him. So another guy you talked about, rookie Jameson Williams followed Deshaun Watson, then Hunter Henry, Tyler Algier, running back for the Atlanta Falcons. Algier, whatever. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but he was going to be my pick. So I'm actually really bummed that his name popped up. Big O, Albert O for the Broncos, and Noah Fant. A little bit of tight ends in round 12. So George is probably a little frustrated since he said I'm going to wait, and now 5 tight ends have gone since his last pick. I'm on the clock with my final pick, and I'm debating 2 names here. One should not be a surprise. I talked about him earlier in the show. Jalen Tolbert, rookie, already running with the number ones, looks promising. Michael Gallup might not be ready to start the season. Will he get how ready will he be right away? Could be an interesting name. And then the other name would be a veteran that was traded this offseason at the wide receiver position, potentially their number one option, but we just don't love that offense, and that would be Devontae Parker. In a full point PPR, I do really like the value for him, but I tend to lean younger, especially when I'm taking my flyer picks. So like if I needed a guy to start week 1, I would lean Devontae Parker, but I like who I have in my starting lineup projected headed to week 1. So I'm going to take a flyer here. I am going to draft Jalen Tolbert, and that's my guy. Jahan Dotson, another rookie, went right after me. George, you are on the clock.
Yeah, you're right. I'm a little bummed that 5 tight ends went since my last pick, but I mean, I can't really say I love Irv Smith, Austin Hooper, Hunter Henry, Alberto, Noah Fant much better than David Njoku, which is where I'm going to go here. Like, I feel like they're all kind of just dartboard picks, and we talked so much about the tight end dartboard last year, so he might not be on my roster all year. Maybe he'll surprise me because of Deshaun Watson when he comes back, but who knows if he'll even be on my roster for those first 6 weeks or however long Deshaun Watson's gone. I'll go at David Njoku and probably ride the waiver wire in that one. So we'll see how it goes.
No love for Funyon Tunyon.
If he wasn't hurt, I like the touchdown upside, and like we were saying, like you're trying to find tight ends with offenses that lost targets. So Austin Hooper has that option. Like Robert Tunyon might have that option too, but who knows if he's going to be ready for the start of the season. So it's tough to take a tight end of all positions and stash it.
But if you have an IR spot, he is currently on PUP. So
fair.
Might have been, and then picked up Njoku right after you made that move, and then you could have had both options. So that's a little bit of the gamemanship. That wraps up our draft. Traditionally your draft be a couple more rounds, so some of our teams might be a little unbalanced, but we would traditionally have 2 more rounds and then your defense around. Normally in a 2-flex league, you don't play with kickers. So probably 3 more rounds out of that, but we wanted to keep it a little bit shorter for you guys, but we never do that here on the Couch GMs podcast. Real quick, we'll go around the horn. Thoughts on your team? Who do you think won the draft? Any teams that stick out to you of the computer picks? George, go ahead, kick it off.
Ooh, I have to jump right in here and kind of take a look at what everybody took on the fly. Man, I am kind of liking what Team 10 did. They kind of went hero running back with Najee Harris. While Najee Harris isn't really my favorite running back of the group, like he's one of the top 8 workhorse
and great
backs.
for PPR.
And great for PPR. And then you went and followed it with Stephon Diggs, who should be a PPR monster. T. Higgins at the end of round 3 is actually pretty good. And Jalen Waddle as a first flex, that's still a solid pick. Elijah Mitchell went after that, who I was debating earlier in that round with Miles Sanders. I think it's a pretty well-balanced team. They still got the rushing quarterback, and they have a stack with Hurts and Goddard. Go ahead, call me a homer. But I think that's a pretty solid team. As it comes to my team, like I feel like I was a little bit scattered at some points in the draft. It was mostly later when it was like trying to find your late round flyers on the board. Where do I go at quarterback? I did probably get myself in a little bit of trouble with the tight end position, but if you're going to be in trouble at any position, tight end is the best one to be in trouble with.
For sure. Snyder, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I would really like Team 1's team a lot if it wasn't for the fact that Chase Edmonds is his number 2 running back, and the only other running back he has is Ronald Jones. Not a fan. Man, Team 9 is brutal. After Joe Mixon, his running backs are James Conner, Cordarrelle Patterson, and Rachaad White, and CeeDee Lamb, Deontay Johnson, and then all young, unproven receivers in the end. I think that's a rough team, but I really like Team 11, honestly. DeAndre Swift, Cam Akers, that's not bad starting running backs. You got Devontae Adams, Marquise Brown, and Brandon Cooks as your number 1 receivers, and then you got George Kittle at tight end, Dak Prescott at quarterback. Really, it's a solid team. As far as my team, obviously I'm going to win the league. It's no question.
Second, behind me.
Yeah, no, win the league is definitely going to happen.
Sorry, you're breaking up. Snyder's disappearing.
Nick Chubb, David Montgomery, solid running backs right there at receiver. Terry McLaurin, Chris Godwin once he comes back from injury, and I got everybody's favorite uncle Hunter Renfrow until that return. Russell Wilson at Q, Travis Kelce at tight end. That's already a leg up on everybody. So I think it's a solid team. Definitely could have used better running back depth later in the draft, but that's how you play the game.
For sure. And if you need running back depth, the team I was going to talk about was Team 2. They have Jonathan Taylor, Javonte Williams, Josh Jacobs, J.K. Dobbins, or Ramondre Stevenson, but they're lacking in wide receivers. They have Mike Evans, Rashad Bateman, Tyler Lockett, Kadarius Toney. So that's a team that you're going to target if you need some running back depth later in the season. I think we hit pretty much most of the teams. If not, head over to YouTube, check out the full draft board. We'll probably post it on the couchgms.com. But this was fun. It was great to have Tyler on board. But as always, thanks for listening to the Couch GMs podcast.
Yeah, guys, and go check out our TikTok. I've been making some videos over there, and I plan on making some more. I'm trying to give you guys some advice to leading into your fantasy season. But if there's anything you want me to make a TikTok about, anything you don't understand, let me know. Message us. If there's anything you want us to talk about on the podcast, let us know, or just talk some smack on our mock draft here and tell us how big of an idiot that George was for making half his picks. Either way, this podcast is more fun for us and more fun for you when you get involved.
Yes, it is, Tyler. And a reminder, everybody, go into the description of this podcast or this YouTube video and check out our Discord. You can send in those questions or those TikTok ideas for Tyler right into there and talk to us live. So thank you all for listening in to another episode of the Couch GMs podcast. For Tyler Snyder and Cody Roadcap, I'm George Kerth, and we'll see you all next time.
Boom.